Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Lucas Ashford had always believed he knew his wife better than anyone else. 17 years of marriage, 2 kids, a business built from the ground up, and a routine that, while predictable, felt as solid as concrete. He was 48 years old, with hair just starting to gray at the temples, and that meticulous demeanor of someone who never left anything to chance. His financial consulting firm in Phoenix served mid- to large-sized clients, and he took pride in every signed contract, every successful strategy, every business relationship carefully cultivated over time. Scarlett, his wife, had always been by his side through it all. She handled administrative tasks when needed, organized social events that strengthened client relationships, and was the devoted mother who drove Jake and Lily to school, helped with homework, and kept the household running like a Swiss watch. To any outside observer, the Ashfords were the picture of a successful American family. But over the past 4 months, invisible cracks had begun to appear in the foundation of this seemingly perfect life. Lucas noticed the small things first. Scarlett was different. More distant, less interested in talking about work, the very thing they'd always discussed together over dinner. She started going out more often, claiming meetings with suppliers she'd never mentioned before or get-togethers with friends Lucas barely knew. Her perfume changed, stronger, more sophisticated. She began dressing up more, hitting the gym with greater discipline, buying new clothes. Lucas tried to convince himself she was just taking care of herself, maybe going through that phase some women have where they rediscover themselves. He even thought it was a good thing at first. She seemed more confident, happier. But there was something else, something he couldn't quite name but that deeply unsettled him. Her phone was always glued to her hand, screen perpetually face down. Whenever he walked into the room, she'd quickly close apps. When a notification buzzed, she'd check it with strange urgency, and her expression would shift, a micro-expression Lucas couldn't decipher but that made his stomach churn. On Thursday, everything changed. Lucas was home, working in his second-floor office, reviewing proposals for an important client. It was mid-afternoon, and the Phoenix sun streamed through the windows, casting patterns of light across the hardwood floor. He needed a document from Scarlett's car glove compartment, something related to an old contract he needed as a reference. He walked downstairs and found her coming out of the bathroom, hair wet, wrapped in a white robe, looking relaxed. She said she was going to dry her hair and headed upstairs. Lucas went to the kitchen to grab her car keys, but then he saw her phone on the table, screen lit up with a new notification. The name that popped up made his heart skip a beat, Brad Kimmel. Lucas knew that name. It belonged to Scarlett's college boyfriend, someone she'd vaguely mentioned years ago as a mistake from her past, a relationship that had ended badly. He'd never paid it much mind, it was all before him, ancient history. But why was Brad texting Scarlett now, after all these years? Lucas glanced toward the stairs. Scarlett was still in the bedroom, the sound of the hair dryer confirmed it. He knew he shouldn't, that it was an invasion of privacy, that marriages needed trust. But something stronger than reason took hold of him. He picked up the phone, unlocked it with the password he knew, their anniversary date, and opened the messages. What he saw in those first few seconds was enough to shatter his world. Intimate conversations, photos he couldn't believe were of his wife, plans for secret meetings. He kept reading, scrolling back through weeks, months. The affair had been going on for at least 8 months. 8 months of lies, stolen kisses, cheap hotels, and whispered promises. Lucas felt nausea, rage, disbelief, all at once. But then he found a message from 3 days earlier that made everything infinitely worse in a way he'd never imagined. Scarlett had written, "I'm so tired of pretending to care about him, Brad. You were right from the start. I'm going to do exactly as we planned, I want to take his company. He trusts me so much he won't even notice until it's too late. Once the divorce goes through, the business will be mine by right, and you and I can finally have what we've always wanted." Brad replied, "Just thinking about you running everything turns me on." He never deserved you. Soon enough, we'll be together for real, no more lies. Lucas had to brace himself against the kitchen counter. It wasn't just betrayal. It was conspiracy. A deliberate plan to destroy him, to take everything he'd built. He kept reading with trembling hands. He discovered Brad wasn't just a lover, he was the architect of an elaborate scheme. Scarlett had brought Brad on as an external consultant 6 months earlier under a fake name and a shell company. Small embezzlements, manipulated contracts, forged documents, all designed to paint Lucas as negligent and position her as the true driving force behind their success. The plan was to accuse him of mismanagement, file for divorce citing emotional abandonment, and claim the company as compensation. Under Arizona's community property laws, she actually stood a real chance of pulling it off. Something strange happened inside Lucas then. The nausea gave way to a cold, almost frightening clarity. He wasn't going to wait. He wasn't going to gather more evidence, watch and wait for weeks, or meticulously plan his next move. He was going to act, right now, in this exact moment. He grabbed his own phone and started photographing every message, every conversation, every piece of evidence. 20 minutes of frantic documentation followed. The hair dryer had stopped, but he didn't care. When he finished, he placed Scarlett's phone exactly where he'd found it and walked upstairs to the bedroom. Scarlett was putting on makeup, smiling, completely unsuspecting. Lucas walked past her without a word, grabbed his laptop, returned to his office, and locked the door. He called Mitchell Cruz, his lawyer and friend since college. Mitchell answered on the second ring. "Lucas? You okay?" Lucas's voice sounded calmer than he expected. "Mitchell, I need you. Now. Tonight. It's urgent, and I can't explain over the phone." Mitchell, who'd known Lucas for decades, recognized the seriousness. "I'll be at the office by 8. Will that work?" Lucas confirmed and hung up. The next few hours were torture. Lucas went downstairs and pretended everything was normal. He had lunch with Scarlett and the kids. 14-year-old Jake complained about his math teacher. 11-year-old Lily showed him a drawing she'd made at school. Scarlett was cheerful, chatting and cracking jokes. Lucas watched it all as if from outside his own body. How could she do it? How could someone sit there, smile at their children, casually touch his hand, while simultaneously plotting his destruction? He finished eating, said he had urgent work, and returned to his office. He spent the afternoon reviewing company documents, searching for the fraudulent contract Scarlett and Brad had created. He found everything: the shell company, the small but consistent money diversions, the forged signatures. It was well done, he admitted to himself, but not well enough to fool someone who truly knew every detail of his own business. At exactly 8 that night, Lucas arrived at Mitchell's office. The lawyer greeted him with strong coffee and a worried expression. As Lucas began showing him the evidence and explaining the scheme, Mitchell went from shock to professional outrage. They spent 3 hours going over everything. Mitchell took notes, made copies, built a timeline. "Lucas, this is serious. Very serious. Scarlett isn't just cheating on you, she's committing fraud. And Brad's in on it too. You've got enough proof here to protect your assets and press criminal charges against both of them if you want." Lucas shook his head. "I want to move fast. Today. I'm confronting her tonight. I need you to have divorce papers ready first thing tomorrow." Mitchell hesitated. "Lucas, maybe it's better to wait, to build a more thorough strategy." Lucas cut him off. "No. I know myself. If I wait, I'll explode in a worse way. I need to do this now, while I still have control." Mitchell sighed but agreed. They spent another hour discussing legal strategy, how to protect the business, how to document everything for court. Mitchell also made Lucas promise he wouldn't do anything violent, nothing that could legally backfire on him. Lucas gave his word. Violence had never been his style. His revenge would be of a different kind. When Lucas got home, it was almost 11. The house was quiet, lights off except for the living room. Scarlett was on the couch, watching a show on TV, a glass of wine in her hand. She looked up and smiled. "Honey, I was worried. You were gone so long." Lucas didn't smile back. He walked in, locked the front door, and went straight to the armchair across from her. He sat down and just stared at her in silence. Scarlett's smile began to falter. "Lucas? What's wrong? You seem strange." He kept silent for a few more seconds, just watching, then spoke in a voice he didn't recognize as his own, so cold it sounded like it belonged to someone else. "Are you going to tell me about Brad, or should I read the messages out loud?" Scarlett's face went pale. The wine glass nearly slipped from her hand. What are you talking about?" Lucas pulled out his phone and started reading. "I'm tired of pretending to care about him. You were right from the start. I'm going to do exactly as we planned. I want to take his company. Should I keep going, Scarlett, or do you get that it's over?" Scarlett set the glass down with trembling hands. She tried to speak, but the words came out jumbled. "Lucas, this isn't, you couldn't have." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes locked on hers. "Don't bother lying now. I know everything. The affair, the ridiculous plan to steal my company, the money diversions, Brad's fake consulting firm. I know you've been cheating on me for 8 months while plotting to destroy me financially. And you know what's most pathetic, Scarlett? You completely underestimated me." She started crying, tears streaming down her carefully made-up face. "Lucas, please, let me explain. I was confused. Brad showed up again and he raised a hand, cutting her off. "I don't want to hear excuses. I don't want to hear how you were confused or lonely or any other cheap justification. You made choices. Deliberate, calculated choices. You didn't just betray me, you conspired to rob me." Scarlett switched tactics, her voice rising in desperation. "I helped build this company, Lucas. I was there, organizing events, making contacts, handling everything while you traveled. I deserve recognition, I deserve a share of it." Lucas let out a bitter, humorless laugh. "You want to talk about what you deserve? You attended dinners, Scarlett. Wore nice dresses, smiled at clients. That's not building a company. I spent sleepless nights risking everything, handling crises, making it work. And now you want to steal from me because you feel entitled? With your pathetic ex-boyfriend?" She tried to stand and move toward him, but Lucas stopped her with a look. "Don't come near me. You disgust me." The words came out harsh, cutting. Scarlett sat back down, now sobbing openly. "What are you going to do? Take my kids away? Leave me with nothing?" Lucas felt a pang of pain thinking of the children, but kept his voice steady. "The kids will stay with me. Do you really think I'd let Jake and Lily live with someone capable of what you've done? Someone who lies so easily, who plots to destroy her own husband? And as for money, you'll get only what the law forces me to give, and with the evidence I have of adultery and fraud, I guarantee it won't be much." Scarlett looked at him with a mix of fear and hatred. "You can't do this. I'll fight back. I'll get a better lawyer than yours." Lucas stood, mechanically adjusting his tie. "Go ahead. But I have every message, every email, every record of those money diversions. I have irrefutable proof. And you know what else? I've already spoken to my lawyer. Divorce papers will be ready tomorrow. I suggest you find somewhere else to stay, because you won't be sleeping in this house again." Scarlett jumped to her feet, her voice now a shout. "You can't kick me out of my own home." Lucas stared at her with a calmness that even frightened him. I can and I will. This house is in my name. The company is in my name. And you, Scarlett, have nothing left here. He went upstairs to the bedroom, locked the door, and spent the night wide awake, staring at the ceiling. He could hear Scarlett moving around the house, crying, making hushed phone calls. He knew who she was calling, probably Brad. Fine. Let her cry. Let her panic. This was only the beginning. The next morning, Lucas woke early, made coffee, and went to wake Jake and Lily. They had school, and he wanted their routine to stay normal, at least for now. Scarlett was in the guest room, eyes swollen, still wearing last night's clothes. When the kids came down for breakfast, she tried acting normal, but Jake, sharp-eyed teenager that he was, noticed something was off. "Mom, are you okay? You look like you've been crying." Lucas stepped in before she could answer. "Your mom's got a cold. Eat up, you've got school." After dropping the kids off, Lucas went straight to Mitchell's office. The papers were ready: divorce filing based on adultery and marital misconduct, request for full custody of the children, and an asset protection order for the business. Mitchell had also launched a formal investigation into the financial diversions and Brad's shell company. The following days unfolded faster than Lucas could have imagined. Scarlett tried hiring a lawyer, but most professionals either refused her case or demanded exorbitant fees she couldn't afford once they saw the evidence against her. The one she finally got was second-rate and clearly fighting a losing battle. Brad, upon learning he was under investigation for corporate fraud, vanished, literally. He shut down the fake company, emptied bank accounts, and disappeared from Phoenix. Scarlett desperately tried contacting him, but he'd blocked all her numbers. The great love, the crime partner, had fled at the first sign of trouble. Lucas heard about it through Mitchell and felt a dark satisfaction. Poetic justice. The divorce process was brutal but swift. With the evidence presented, the court showed Scarlett no sympathy. Proven adultery, attempted corporate fraud, marital misconduct, the judge was clear: Lucas would keep the business intact, the primary home, and full custody of the children. Scarlett would receive only minimal compensation, far below standard asset division, and supervised visitation with the kids for the first 6 months, subject to review based on her behavior. Arizona law allowed this kind of adjustment when clear bad faith and intent to harm a spouse were proven. Scarlett tried appealing, but her lawyer advised her to accept the settlement. Prolonging the case would only worsen her situation, especially with pending criminal fraud charges. The hardest part for Lucas was talking to Jake and Lily. He waited until the divorce was finalized and things had settled somewhat, then sat them down on a Saturday afternoon. 14-year-old Jake already suspected something serious had happened. 11-year-old Lily was confused about why mom didn't live with them anymore. Lucas chose his words carefully, explaining in age-appropriate terms that sometimes adults make serious mistakes, that mom had made bad choices that hurt the family, but that it wasn't their fault, and that both he and their mom still loved them. Jake stayed quiet for a long time, processing, then asked, "She cheated on you, didn't she, Dad?" Lucas didn't lie. "Yes. And she did other things that weren't right. But that's between me and her. You can still have a relationship with your mom if you want." Jake shook his head, tears in his eyes. "I don't know if I want to. She lied to us too." Lily started crying, and Lucas held them both, his heart breaking. They didn't deserve this pain. No child should suffer for their parents' mistakes. Brad was found 3 months later in Nevada. He'd tried restarting under a fake name, but the fraud investigation caught up with him. He was criminally charged and eventually took a plea deal to avoid jail time, paying heavy fines and receiving probation. He never contacted Scarlett again. As for her, Scarlett had to move into a small apartment across town and took an administrative job at an accounting firm, earning a fraction of what she was used to. Visits with the kids were tense. Jake barely spoke to her, still hurt by the betrayal. Lily was more open, but her innocence was gone. Scarlett tried rebuilding those relationships, but it was slow and painful. She'd lost everything: her family, financial security, reputation, the man she'd risked it all for. Her social circle vanished. No one wanted to be associated with the scandal. She was alone in a way she'd never imagined possible. Lucas, on the other hand, underwent a transformation. The first few months were hard: sleepless nights, waves of anger, moments of doubt about whether he'd done the right thing. But slowly, he began finding peace. He brought on a new business partner, a woman named Rachel, competent, ethical, full of fresh ideas and renewed energy. The company not only survived the scandal but thrived. Clients respected how Lucas handled the situation, his integrity, his discretion. He became more present in Jake and Lily's lives, adjusted his schedule to travel less, and made sure to be there for soccer games, school performances, and late-night talks. He learned to cook better because the kids said they missed home-cooked meals. He realized he could be both a father and a businessman without sacrificing one for the other. It was all about priorities. 2 years after the divorce, Lucas sat in the backyard on a Sunday afternoon, watching Jake play basketball with friends while Lily read on the porch. The Phoenix sun was warm, the sky clear, and for the first time in a long while, Lucas felt something close to contentment. He'd been through one of the worst experiences of his life, betrayed in the cruelest possible way, but he'd survived. More than that, he'd rebuilt himself. The business was strong, the kids were healing, and he'd learned valuable lessons about trust, about warning signs he'd never ignore again, about protecting what was his. He'd started dating again, not anything serious yet, just a few dinners with a yoga instructor he'd met through friends. She was kind, transparent, and Lucas was learning to trust again, slowly, cautiously. Scarlett, he heard through mutual acquaintances, was still struggling to get back on her feet. The accounting job barely covered her bills. She'd tried reconnecting with old friends, but most avoided her. Brad never reappeared in her life, and she was alone, facing the consequences of her choices. Lucas didn't take pleasure in her suffering, but he didn't feel pity either. It was simply the natural outcome of poor decisions. Actions had consequences, and Scarlett was living hers. Jake and Lily still visited her, but the relationship never returned to what it once was. Trust, once broken that deeply, was nearly impossible to fully rebuild. Lily, being younger, forgave more easily, but Jake maintained a polite yet firm distance. He'd grown up too fast, forced to understand adult complexities before his time. Lucas learned that betrayal isn't just about physical infidelity. It's about broken trust, accumulated lies, secret plans to destroy the person who's supposed to be your partner. He learned people can change, that masks can be worn for years, and that sometimes you only discover who someone truly is when they stand to gain by destroying you. But he also learned about resilience, about the human capacity to rebuild even when everything seems lost. He learned that protecting yourself and those you love isn't selfish, it's survival. And he learned that justice, however painful and complex, must be pursued. He didn't regret acting quickly, confronting Scarlett that very night, or fiercely protecting his assets and his children. That's what saved everything that mattered to him. One quiet night, months later, Jake came looking for Lucas in his office. The boy, now 16, was taller, more mature, with that serious expression that sometimes startled Lucas because it reminded him so much of himself. "Dad, can I ask you something?" Lucas set his laptop aside. "Always." Jake hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Do you still love Mom? Like, after everything?" Lucas thought for a long moment before answering. "I loved the person I thought she was. But that person wasn't real, Jake. It was a mask. The real woman made choices that showed she never truly loved me, not in the way that matters. So no, I don't love her anymore. But I don't hate her either. I've just moved on." Jake nodded slowly. It's weird, but I think I get it. Thanks for protecting us, Dad. I know it wasn't easy. Lucas felt his eyes sting but kept his composure. It was the easiest thing I've ever done, son. You're my priority. Always have been, always will be. Lucas Ashford's story didn't end with a fairy tale happy ending. It ended with something more realistic, and perhaps more valuable: peace earned through pain, lessons learned through betrayal, dignity preserved through struggle. He didn't forget what Scarlett had done, but he also refused to let it define him. Life went on, as it always does, and Lucas learned to live it with his eyes wide open, his heart protected but not closed, armed with the bitter wisdom of someone who'd weathered a storm and emerged stronger, more cautious, yet still capable of finding moments of joy amid the chaos. And maybe that's the real victory, not just surviving betrayal, but finding a way back to life, to trust, to the possibility of something better. Lucas did that. And he knew that no matter what happened, he and his children would be okay. Because in the end, they had each other, and they had the truth. And that was more than Scarlett would ever have again. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.